Thank you, Mr. Chair and Director. Thank you for being here. Appreciate everything you do. I just want to go back to something you said about a request being made in 2003. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? And can you tell us how many of those, explain the request, if you don't mind,
Sure.
and tell us how many of those rape kits were sent to you per your request, and how many at the time were you asking for?
Well, how that came about, Representative Parkinson, is Metro Nashville came to me and said they thought they had about 300 untested rape kits in their vault. At that time, it was not just, it was a national issue. There were a lot of states dealing with untested rape kits, so the federal government put a grant out for no suspect rape kits. So at that time, I decided as assistant director of the forensic division to put out a memo to all law enforcement in the state, asking them to inventory their evidence vaults, and that I had acquired funding for these rape kits. Initially, I got back a count, and don't hold me to the exact number, but it was somewhere a little over 2,000 from all of law enforcement in the state. Once I got that back, I asked them to then turn in those kits, and it ended up, I think, with maybe 1,700, 15 to 1,700 from all across the state. We outsourced those, and once again, we thought we had taken care of that problem. I think we got 250-something, maybe from Memphis. You know, we knew there was an issue out there, but it was a national issue, and the federal government had addressed that with some funding, and that's what we did our attempt to try and alleviate the problem.
And so, just to be clear, out of when you requested all of the rape kits from all of the agencies, from Memphis, you received 250, about 250. Can you give us an estimate of what you think that number of rape kits that was in the possession at that time? Just an estimate.
I really can't. I mean, that was 2003, and I know that some of these rape kits down there go back to the 80s. So to try and extrapolate out how many would have been there in 2003, that wouldn't be good.
Okay, it's been reported that there are 14,000 plus rape kits in the backlog in Memphis now. Is there any way that you can extrapolate a number in the idea of what we may have been looking at the time when 250 were brought to you?
Yeah, no. I mean, I don't think. You would almost have to go through each one of those and get the dates out of the crime and when they were, you know, yeah, that would be. I'm not in a position. Maybe Memphis could tell you, but
okay.
Really
the federal grant that you received, was it enough in that federal grant to cover all of the rape kits that could have been submitted to TBI at the time?
Yeah, there was no, as far as I can remember, and you know, it's 2003, but there was no limit on how much you could request. You could request how many you got in, you could request that, and it was a drawdown grant. You know, I didn't get any extra money because I said there was 2,000 and something. I didn't get money for 2,000. I got money for the 1,700 that we sent out.
So would it be safe to say that had all of the rape kits been submitted, that we wouldn't be nearly in the situation that we're in now in regards to the 14,000 backlog rape kits?
That would be safe to say. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Director.
Thank you,
Representative Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director, for being here today, and thank you for the job that each one of your agents do.
Thank you.
I know that having been a small-town law enforcement officer and sheriff's deputy at one point in my career, that we relied on the TBI for major investigations. And I remember when major crimes happened maybe once or twice through my lifetime, because Fayette County doesn't have a whole lot of violent crime, but the TBI was involved and was there to help, and we certainly appreciate that. I'd like to go in a little different direction for a question to ask you. I think in state law enforcement, we see that commissioned officers have a mandatory retirement, some at 60, some at 62. I know that they're given a Social Security bridge at this point, but do you feel that it is the best policy to have some of these experienced and commissioned law enforcement officers be put into forced retirement? and I'll give you a specific example, is one of the finest law enforcement officers I've known. His name is Robert Lee. He is a TBI agent, and he made no complaints about his retirement, but he was retired due to age. The experience that he had, the education that he has, I think are valuable tools, and I don't know that at 70 years old someone needs to be running up and down chasing bad guys or knocking down doors, but you know, today people are in better shape. Healthcare has been better, and people are living longer, and therefore I just wonder if maybe we make this huge investment in people over a career for the experience, and then at the peak of probably their experience and expertise, we force them to retire. Is that something that you believe should be addressed by this General Assembly?
Well, I can tell you, I think it's one of those things that's a case by case. I've seen, like you said, I've seen some agents in law enforcement that at 60 they were just as sharp as probably they were at 50 or whatever. I've seen some that probably needed to go at 60 and probably maybe before that. I think you've got to look, you know, law enforcement it's a changing world out there. It's not the same law enforcement you and I were in, you know, back in the 80s. I think it's a lot more dangerous. You know, we didn't deal with a lot of gangs, and we didn't have meth and a lot of things that are out there now. I think it's a lot more dangerous. I think there's a lot more happening. It's a lot more fast-paced. It's more technology out there now. But I really think to put a blanket over saying that everybody maybe should have an opportunity to move it to 65, I really think you've got to look at that person. I really think it has to be, if there was some way to evaluate people individually, I think that would be good. To say, yeah, you're fit, you're still sharp, you can do this, but the last thing you want, as you know, to put someone's life in jeopardy just because they're trying to hang on for the wrong reason. And that would be the fear I would have. But there are a number of people, and a lot of it depends on the job you're in. You know, I think you look at a TBI agent does a different job than a sheriff's deputy. You know, we're not first responders. We're probably not going to run up to those gangbangers and all that head on like a sheriff's deputy or a patrolman. So you got to look at that aspect too. What is that person doing? What's their job? Are they a patrolman or are they a captain? You know, so I think there's a lot of variables in there.
Well, and I agree with that. I think that most of the local law enforcement does not have that gap of that mandatory retirement. And I was just wondering, specifically with TBI, because of the detailed investigations that you're doing, do you all have the 100-day employee program with TBI?
Day, absolutely. And I bring a lot of agents back on that. And specifically, it's a wealth of knowledge. You know, I don't want to lose that wealth of knowledge. And some of them, that fits well with them because they don't want to be full-time, I guess you would say it. They'd rather work different parts and pieces and be in that role at the end of their career. So it works out well for us. We've gotten a lot out of that.
And what do you have your 120-day employees do?
It really depends. I've got some that are handling my firearms program. I've got some doing training. It just a myriad of things. Some doing backgrounds. And it's really freed up our agents to work more on cases. You know, nothing wrong with doing a background, but if I had my choice between an agent working on a murder and working on a background, I'd rather them be working at murder. So I can put 120-day on working the backgrounds and free that agent up to be working the violent crimes that they need to be focusing on day to day.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you.